Now that I have all of my sides, my 6 sides cut out, I'm going to start putting them together, and they're all got their mitered 45-degree angles there on the sides, all the way around. And as you cut these out, you're going to end up with a lot of scraps of clay that look like this. So just ask you if you can please just kind of as you go, just sort of squish them up a couple times into a larger chunk. That way what'll happen if these are like left out, these will dry really fast. So if they dry really fast, then I'm not able to fix them. It takes a lot longer to sort of fix the clay and get water back into it, but if it's a nice big block, this is not going to dry out. This is going to dry out very slowly. So just squish them up into a block, stick them aside. I'll take care of them. I'll have my TAs fix those things. All right, so I've got all 6 of my sides. And again, I use the same template because it's a square, and if I've got a rectangle, I need 2 templates. I need one that is a square for the ends, and then I need one that's a rectangle for all the other sides. All right, I'll set these aside. So I've got my water bucket, and I've got my brush, got my knife tool just in case, and I've got my scoring tool, and I've kind of cleaned it off a little bit. I always like to clean my tools off because the last person may have had it all gunked up. If it's gunked up, it's not going to score that thing very well. All right. And I've actually pre-rolled some very sort of skinny coils here, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with those here in a little bit. These may actually be a little too thick. And even if they get a little cracky, it's okay. So I'm actually going to thin that one down a little bit. All right. So if I bend that, it's going to crack a little bit, but this will be useful for our purposes, so I'm going to set this aside. Okay. So again, these are going to attach like so. So I'll have a nice corner edge there. You can see that nice sharp edge. All right, so I'm just going to score back and forth, one side, and on the other side. I'm just going to take that extra, squish it on that ball that I made, set my tool aside. All right, so now I'm just going to get some water in there. Just try to sort of touch it on there. And I'm going to go ahead and get some water on this side too. It can't hurt to have a little extra. And then I'm just going to press these together. Until I get my bond. Okay, I'm kind of like holding it and sort of pinching it together, so I'm trying to retain that corner. And make sure I connect those up in the back. Now this is going to be kind of very weak. All right, so we need to do a little something else to it. Now we could have used slip, which is super squishy, kind of messy, kind of hard to deal with. You got to clean up a lot after it, but I'm going to use a coil, and I'm going to sort of measure the coil. It's about that long on the inside. I'll make it a little smaller. Just gonna sort of tear it off. Okay, maybe make it a little thinner than that. So I want to make sure that it's not too long. It's a little too long. So a little bit shorter than the length of my wall. And what I'm going to do with this coil is I'm actually going to stick it in the corner like that, and I'm going to squish that up so it's another little added bit of clay in there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the coil, I'm going to dunk it in my water, okay, and then I'm just going to sort of gently stick it in the corner there. And so the water is going to make it kind of tacky, and then I'm just going to sort of squish it in place. I'm just running my finger, I'm holding this like this, and I'm running my finger up, and I'm kind of going back the other way. So that when I'm done, it looks like this, and my bond is a lot stronger. Now, it's still going to be kind of a little on the fragile side, so we kind of have to work quickly. So the best thing to do is to sort of have everything ready to go. Like I said, I have all of my sides ready. They're all mitered, so I did all the sides. I did all of the cuts. Okay, that's all ready. Then I have, you know, a bunch of extra coils rolled out. Okay, maybe I'll make that a little thinner. All right, and so I've got them, you know, to the right size. Whoa, and see, I bumped it, but it didn't rip. So I'm okay. So you want to have a lot of these sort of done ahead of time. That way you don't have to suddenly stop and then you're like, then you run out of time. So it's really important when you start doing the sides that you get 4 together in one class period. Super, super important, because if you don't, this is very weak. And if this gets bumped, it's going to very easily tear apart. But as long as you get this coil on the inside, then you'll be okay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and score here. And what I should have done is I should have scored this side already, because it's going to be a little harder to score it. But I can still do okay. All right. I'll go ahead and score this one while I'm at it. Okay. All right, I've got those done. Get a little water in there. Go ahead and just sort of dunk that. I'm just going to let that sit in the water so it'll stay nice and wet. I'm going to sort of push those together. Now, because my clay sides are, clay was a lot stiffer, you know, it's keeping its shape, it's not flopping. If this was really wet like our coil clay, this would be bending down. Because it's not doing that, I can push against this a little bit harder than I would normally be able to do with my other wet clay. Now with wet clay, if you're using slabs, you can do some cool stuff that you can't do as much with the drier clay. It all kind of depends on what you want to do. All right, so I got my coil in here, if I can fish it out. Well, that got really wet. Okay, I'm just going to turn this. Makes it a little easier for me to do this. And again, I'm just going to kind of poke it in the inside, and I'm just going to squish it in, holding it on the outside. I'm just going to kind of go back and forth until it gets all the way in there, and that really squished it in there. So if I got a little extra, I can just kind of do that. That looks pretty good. All right, that's on there. All right, last one. So remember, you need 4 sides. You want to get 4 sides together in a hurry. Because once this is together and it's like a little box that doesn't have a bottom or a top, it's going to be much more stable. All right. And then make sure you're holding the slab while you're scoring it, because of course anytime you move it, it's going to push and pull the clay. It's going to want to stretch. And when clay is plastic or very squishy and soft and has a lot of water content in it, it'll stretch a lot. But if it's more rigid, it will tend to break and crack. Okay, I'm gonna put water on this. Water, water, water. And again, really rough this up. If you don't rough this up, these will not come together. And it's also really important that you put the little beads of clay in the side of it. All right, this one's gonna be a little tricky. So I've gotta do two at once. So I'm kind of holding the inside and I'm kind of having the outside where I have my kind of flat hands, kind of pressing it there. And once I get everything sort of formed, I can go back and I can kind of pretty up the edges a little bit. And notice that I'm not working on the table because this is going to stick. This will not stick. This will pop right off. Okay, so that looks pretty good. So I'm going to do my coils. Carefully move this over. Get it wet. Whoops. Be careful with that. Put it in the inside. I'll do the same thing. I'll hold it from the outside. Kind of run my finger along there. You could also get a wood tool. The wood tools that are located behind the knife tools. My last one. Now if you get wet hands and you touch the outside of your nice smooth faces of your box, what's going to happen is you're going to leave fingerprints, kind of these little gooey fingerprints. So you probably don't want that. Now you're not really going to be able to tell a whole lot because we're going to be glazing these and it'll be covered up by the glazes. But you know, if you want it super duper smooth, you'll need to go back over with a rib and kind of get rid of those. Best thing to do is to wait until it's, well, you can do it now while it's wet, but when it's a little drier, okay? But don't use the sponge on it because when you drag the sponge, you'll make little grooves because the sponge is porous and it's got little teeth to it. All right, so this is pretty solid this way. Now, if I moved it this way, it's gonna rip. Now, if you have time, you can put the bottom and the top on. Now, you might be like, well, Mr. Davis, why are we putting a bottom and a top? Well, you know, I'll sort of show you in the last video what we're going to do when we get those bottoms and the tops on. But for now, when you put this away, you got to be super careful so that you don't break those little joints that you just made. So I'm going to set it on this. I'm going to put the bag over the top of it. I'm going to kind of stick the bag in it. And then I'm going to get the bag totally stuck to the entire thing. And if you want to make sure that it's totally stuck, you could like take a little water on your finger and just kind of gently get it around the outside of the box. So just like that. And that should be good to go. We do not want to wrap it in wet paper towels. That's going to make it too soggy and wobbly, and then you're going to lose your box form. But make sure you're doing this when you go to put it away.